Hey everybody, I'm Katie Arroyo,
And I'm Laura Manasowich.
and this is Pinky Promise.
Pinky Promise.
A podcast about growing up on the internet.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like.
You'd think we'd be better at it.
You'd think. We have very special and very patient guest with us today. We have comedian, podcaster, writer, content creator, just Boston comic extraordinaire. We have Rob Crean. Hi, Rob.
Hi, thanks for being
Hello,
here.
Rob.
I think that your intro was just the right amount of anemic.
Perfect. I was trying to keep it like anemic, but like fun anemic, you know?
Yeah.
Listeners, you guys didn't get to hear this on the other 18 intros that we had to do due to our technical issues, but I did receive a lovely note from our producer / my boyfriend that I sounded a little anemic in a couple episodes and I should turn up the fun. So this is what that sounds like, unhinged.
Turn
yeah.
up the fun. I think I would become rabid. I look forward to getting that note.
You will not get that note. Those notes are just for me. But this week we are actually going to talk about something unhinged as well. We are going to talk about underage drinking. Scandalous.
Woo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we did talk a little bit about drinking in our episode about Clicks with Sarah Garner, and Laura told us that she basically lived like a double life while she was growing up, and she would go out and drink a lot with her work friends, but then her school friends, she was like all business, only homework, no fun time. Very behaved.
No, we had fun, but we did not drink. Drinking was not part of school friends' fun. Drinking was part of work friends' fun.
Yeah. And mine was drinking so much it was not fun sometimes. And that
different
started
experiences.
Yeah, it was an experience that we had. How about you, Rob?
Yeah, I started drinking young. I started drinking when I was like 11,
Okay.
and I went to Catholic school, which was a very bad experience, and I didn't really have any friends at school. And then I would hang with my cousin, who was a little bit older than me, and one of the main things that we would do is we would drink, and it was a lot of fun. Underage drinking is it's fun, and it's not like it, and a lot of it is sort of like the super bad movie where like some of the fun is just the attempt to get the alcohol, like just the quest is
Yes.
part of it. Like there were like whole nights we spent just like searching for alcohol, and we never got it, but it was still a fun night because we had the goal, you know.
That's right.
So I thought I had my first drinking experience when I was like 13, which I felt like that was young. But then I'm talking to some people like you and a couple other of my friends, and they're like, no, I was like 10 or 11. And I'm like, I was still playing with Barbies. I thought I was cool because I hit that at 13.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I was still a child. Like I was still in many ways extremely childish. And it was just, I don't know, my whole social development was fucked up because I went to Catholic school, and that's not a good idea.
Yeah.
Also, like it was Catholic school, but also I went to school like kind of far away from where I lived. So I would see people at school, and then I wouldn't see them outside of school, which is, I think an important part of development is like you see people in school, and then after school you also socialize with the same people, which I never had until I was in high school.
Yeah.
So
what was the first thing that you drank?
so yeah.
Like,
oh, it was like it was a beer that was at the time was called Natural Light.
Oh yes.
And it's since been then this is in the early 90s. There was like a huge thing in like beer where they had like all the beers had an ice imprint. So they had like Bud Ice, Coors Ice, and it was like, this beer's so cold you won't believe it. And and they were I think with the like I was like, very young at the time, but I believe that like Budweiser and stuff, they had like special trucks that were like cooled down, and in order to carry the beer, you had to have like a freezer that like kept it really cold. It was really specific. And then Natural Light, they just changed their name to Natural Ice. They didn't actually do any of the other stuff that was like supposed to make it like the ice version of the beer. They just were like, yeah, we'll just
Right.
We'll
change.
call it ice.
Yeah, we'll just change.
Yeah.
And then like
Wasn't
the
like
like ice
part of
fad lasted a summer. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
no,
it
that's I was
lasted
gonna
like a
say, like,
summer.
wasn't that
No
like
one knows.
part of the marketing? Like part of the deal was like, these trucks are so cold
Yeah,
they'll freeze your butt off. And we were like, wow, that beer must be incredible because
It's
that
very
truck is
cold.
it's
freezing.
so cold.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then I think so somehow in our high school years and like junior high years, we thought that ice beer what had more alcohol in it. So we were like, "Oh, like I'm drinking ice," which maybe it had like 0.5% more or something, but there was something where like if someone showed up with like a case of ice, they were like ready to party. Like they were like, "We're going to get fucked up." So much more than if I drink 36 regular beers.
yeah.
For us, our
But yeah,
first
It's
we
not
bought
the
beer.
alcohol poisoning, it's the ice.
the the first time that I got drunk though was I was at my with my cousin Sean, and we were at his friend Mike's house, and Mike had I like it's one of those memories that I'm like I can't quite figure out how it makes sense, but Mike had a a girl living with him, like with his family, who was a foreign exchange student. And I don't know if I can't remember how she was able to buy alcohol, because she must have been in high school, but these are the things I've been able to figure out. Either A, she had a fake ID. That probably makes sense. And then I think part of it was like there was I think that because she was from Europe, and in Europe the drinking age was 18. I think she was 18, and I think that there was this is in the 90s, so I think that there were some liquor stores that were like, "Oh, if you're from Europe, you can buy. We'll let you buy
Yeah,
beer."
yeah.
I guess. Or
I just
the other
picture,
thing
like,
that I
the
think,
old dudes at the gas station being, like, mesmerized by her, like, ethnic beauty, and they were just like, "Yeah, take this beer. You look like an adult. Like, I'd like
I
to
mean, she
bang
was
you."
European. She was like Polish or something. Her ethnic beauty was the ethnicity of white.
Perfect.
But
But
with an accent.
the other thing that I think, yeah, she did have an accent. That's true. But the other thing that I think might be possible is I think that maybe she had been a foreign exchange student and lived with them, and then had come back to live in the U.S. later.
Oh.
So that it might be that. I don't know. I don't really know how. But for somehow this foreign exchange student who did not want to hang out with us at all seemed a little bit put off that we were asking her to do this. Did go buy all this beer for us, like, and I was the youngest. I was 11, but the other kids were like 13 or 14. So, you know, and then we got
Isn't
drunk.
that funny now? Like, um, we had some situations where, especially when we were like, we couldn't drive, and adults would buy us beer, or like people in their 20s would buy us beer, or like we used to do the thing where you stood outside the liquor store and you'd get someone to buy it for you or whatever. I would
Yeah.
never like, I think that I'm cool, and now, like, I'm like, if I saw a 13-year-old, I would be like, "Are you smoking too?" Like, I'd be like, "Does your mother
Yeah.
know where you are?" I can't. I'm like, "Who
This is
is
a weird
Around
thing
around New Year's Eve, my
smoking. I was always
sorry.
oh no,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Go ahead.
We're
Go ahead.
crushing it.
I
We're
was
just
just gonna say,
crushing
like,
it."
around around New Year's Eve, my boyfriend and I were like, we should make terrible club drinks, like shit that we haven't drank in 15, like, I don't know, in a long time, and have no like blue and green drinks. We're like, we should do that. And then we were trying to buy the alcohol that goes into them, and we like couldn't find it because the stores we were going to were too nice. And like at one point, we were like, we gotta go. Who sells to minors? We gotta go somewhere that's gonna like Midori is not at the cute package store, right? It's like who's gonna
Yeah.
sell gross rum to a 15-year-old. That's where we're
You're like,
turning.
who's got the kid alcohol?
It's weird. You were talking about smoking though. I was
Yeah.
always like from a very young age. I was always able to buy cigarettes. Like when I was very young, like when I was like up until I was like 10 or 11, probably, I could just go to the store and say that I was buying cigarettes from my mother, which I was,
Yeah.
and they would just be like, okay, sure. And then I just have always looked kind of old. Like I just have, I mean, I just look old. I mean, I've always looked like kind of as old as I look now, which is pretty old. So when I was a teenager, I could pass for an adult, and so I could always buy cigarettes, but it's always been hard to buy alcohol as a minor in Massachusetts, as far as I know.
We had in New York our license plates, like, or our driver's licenses, they were that kind of material that you could bend and like the powder would come out of them. And I became quite skilled at chalking IDs. And so we were all born in 83, like all of our friends. And so I could turn that 3 into a 0. And all of my friends became born in 1980. And it turned into like a thing
Whoa.
where people paid me to do it in college for them, and I took it like really seriously. Like there were secret numbers on the license that you didn't know were actually people knew, but like they were your birth year. So if you just only chalked the actual birth date, but not this like secret code, you could get it caught. And I would spend like hours. Well, like it was probably like an hour, but in college it felt like I was like slaving away at this. And so I would chalk it, and then like you could chalk it and then wipe it and then chalk it and then wipe it and chalk it and wipe it until the like pencil like went into the license. And so they wouldn't wipe off, like they wouldn't smudge. And so people would pay me to chalk their
Whoa.
licenses for them. And at one point, I went in to a bar, and I think my sister and I were both using the same. Like she had like my permit, and I had my license, which we were really like, you know how you just get cocky, like you just getting in on my own fake
Yeah.
ID is not enough. Now me and my sister are gonna use the same ID, but right after each other. And so at one point, I had a bouncer who was he was just like looking at it, and he wiped it, and like nothing happened, and he was just like bending it and doing all that stuff. He goes in the back, like behind the bar, and he grabs cleaner, and he like sprays it with cleaner and wipes it for like 5 or 6 minutes. And then he was like, "This is the best job I've ever seen. You can come in." And I was like, trashed, of course. And I was like,
Whoa.
"Woo!" But also now I gotta re-chalk it. It was
So
such
he was like, by
it was like a
like
trash
you by
bar. Like
chalking, you mean you would like
you take colored
you would apply
pencils,
chalk to it?
kind of like it used to
Yeah.
be called chalking, but we would take colored pencils and you would make them super sharp. And like to turn the 83 to an 80, you would just like outline the edge of the 3 to make it like a 0, and then you fill the middle with white. And then you could do it with 3
Whoa.
colors. You need the numbers. I still remember the numbers were red. So I needed red for the big birthday, and then there was a secret code at like the bottom that was black ink. And so you just needed red, white, and black, and just make them as sharp as possible. And then you just had to also make sure you chalk the secret code number as well. But the 8 to the 3 was the easiest. Like 9 was an easy one. So we would just like depend, like I specifically remember 83 went to 80. 86 went to 80, but that's like a stretch, like 6 years older, but we did it. And
Yeah.
like you could change
Yeah.
uh,
89 to 80 is really tough.
yeah, that one was like, I'm
Like, I
not
mean,
gonna do this for you.
easy to do, but
So,
yeah.
yeah. But yeah, it's
We
just
learned
like
about chalking because
uh
when I went to school was when I got friends from New York, and then I learned about like the wild
chalk.
world of chalking. And like, I
Yeah.
guess you buy then if you've got this special trick, you're
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. So, like, we didn't even
Yeah, I mean,
understand that there were, like, licenses you couldn't chalk. Like, what were you gonna say?
yeah. Well, I think that New York at the time, I remember being not as strict because I had friends that had fake IDs that they would use in New York, but they couldn't use them in Massachusetts because
Mm.
it just
Hmm.
was harder.
Yeah, and I
Because
think, like
Massachusetts is just
I
weird.
went to school in
Massachusetts is
Springfield, and it
yeah.
sorry, I went to school
Oh,
in
was
Springfield, and it felt like not that hard, but also that could be because it was Springfield.
you
uh,
know what? It might just be Boston, honestly. It probably is just
yeah.
Boston because
could be.
Boston has so many colleges, and it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know. We've had like laws changed because like parents complained to the
That's what I was just
students.
gonna say, yeah.
So stupid. Yeah.
100%.
You've got
Yeah.
donor parents that their kids are fuck ups, so they're like, "We need to make stricter rules."
Yeah. It's
There was
crazy.
a bar across the street from our school that was like I truly it would get shut down like clockwork, and because I used to say like you could be 8 with a library card and they would let you in, and it
Mm.
was just a disaster, and they would always like come up with brilliant plans to try to keep the kids from drinking, which was just like, can you just admit your defeat and that you can't do this? And the best was like it was split into two sides, like one was the bar and the other side was the dance floor. And one year, and it had like archways to go from side to side, and one year they put chain link fence in those arches, and it was like to keep to keep the underage kids away from the bar, but it was like, A, you can still walk through that one because 21-year-old people like to dance too, and B, if there's a fire,
Yeah.
everyone in here is dead, and like the likelihood of there being a
But not
fire,
drunk.
Yeah.
right, but
Yeah.
sober, so we could all realize we were gonna die,
Yeah.
disaster.
Uh, I grew up just south of Boston, and there are definitely some shady elements and stuff like that. But one of my best friends, Bill, is from Chicopee, and he talks about growing up in that part of the state, and it seems it it's like very scary to me. It's a scary place.
I feel like, I think I would be intimidated to be, like, out in that area if I was so as young as I was at the times that I was going out, like, first going
Yeah.
out. So, did you
Yeah.
Yeah,
and your
Yeah.
having
cousins
Just
two
are
bars.
yeah, go ahead.
oh.
Did you and your
I was just
cousins
like
start
having two
drinking
bars across the
regularly?
street from school. Oh, fuck.
Wow, we are having a delay, listeners,
I'm
and
gonna
we're not
go.
dealing with it well. That's what's happening. Little peek behind the curtain. We are recording remotely, crushing it. Rob,
uh, I
did you and
think
your cousin start drinking regularly, or did you guys, like, drink once and then sit on it for a year, or were you just, like, did you have a taste? Like, did you have
oh
a taste for blood?
oh yeah. I mean, he was already drinking pretty regularly, and I would just whenever I would go to hang out with him, I would stay at his house a lot. I would drink as we were always that was all we wanted to do. We would drink all the time,
Yeah,
and that was like what I did for my entire like junior high life was every time and it was usually the weekends or more during the summer, but during the weekends I would be like, yeah, I'm gonna go to Sean's house. We're gonna try and get trashed if we can. And yeah, it was.
how old were you so, like, you had your first beer when you were 11, but how old were you when you got drunk for the first time?
Oh, it was that
It was
night, and it was like they were like, "We're gonna get drunk," and I was like, "I don't know about that," and they were like, "Come on," and I was like, and my cousin like opened a beer and handed it to me. He was like, "Just have a beer," and I was like, "Okay," and then 4 beers later, I was like, "This is pretty cool," and then they were like, "We're gonna smoke pot," and I was like, "I'm not smoking pot," but then I had like another beer, and I was like, I'll have a little bit of pot," and then yeah. It
You're
was
loose
very,
as a
very
goose.
classic. Yeah, like I loosened up you know, pretty quickly. But yeah, I got drunk that night, and the first time I remember getting like really drunk though, like really like
Like, sick?
yeah, sick was I was staying at a different cousin's house who was a little bit younger than me, and my my cousin Sean had told me about a party that was near my cousin's house, and so I just showed up at the party, and it was, like, some of my cousin wasn't there, but some of his friends were there, and they had a keg, and so me and my cousin Mike just got, like, uh, totally trashed,
This is
so
at
drunk.
age 11?
I was probably 13 at this point. Mike's
Okay.
probably 11,
That's
and
so crazy to me.
yeah, we got so drunk. It was literally 3 doors down from Mike's house, though, and so we went home and, like, went to sleep, and I would stay at my cousin Mike's house, a lot, and my parents would usually pick me up, like, in the early afternoon, but for some reason, this time they showed up early to pick me up, because I think I lived in a different town than, all my family, and so usually, like, my parents would go home at night and then come back to the town to pick me up, in mid-afternoon, but I think they'd probably stayed over someplace the night before, so they picked me up early, and then I got home and my father made me mow the lawn, and we never discussed, like, if he knew that I was, like, really hungover, but I was, like, very brutally hungover, and he made me mow the lawn, and it was extremely difficult.
I had a
Um,
friend that grew up on a farm, and he was super smart, like, I think he graduated, like, 3rd in the class, and he got trashed at a party, and, when he woke up, like, I think he came home very drunk, and it was, like, very obvious that he was trashed. When he woke up, his dad didn't say a word to him, but he was like, "These are the chores you have to do today." They were, like, all these manual labor farm chores, and he was like, "I don't usually do that, like, that's not my job." And, he was like, "We've, to this day, like, never spoken about it, but he knew, and I never came home that drunk again." He was like,
yeah.
I yeah. But I was just gonna ask you, if your parents sent you to a Catholic school, were they, like, obviously they weren't aware probably of it happening, but were they the type that if they had known that you were drinking, they would be really upset, or were they kinda, like, laid back?
I mean, they definitely wouldn't have, like, I definitely, like, as an adult, I would, like, get very drunk with my mother a lot. My mom liked to drink. My parents liked to drink. I mean,
I was
they
gonna
were
say, how Irish
they were
are
big
you?
drinkers. Yeah, I mean, they're yeah. I mean, they both were, and at the time I mean, it was a tough time in our family. Like, they were going through a lot of stuff, and they were drinking a lot. They were doing a lot of coke and stuff. So they had their own problems.
This is
And
while you
then
were, like, 11?
yeah, yeah, around that
Okay.
time. So it was like, look, they were like small business owners in the early '90s, which sucks. That sucks to be small business owners in the
Yeah.
early '90s. So, what are you gonna do? Everything fell apart, and we were all just trying to get through. So yeah,
Did
I
you
mean,
have
I don't think my mother ever really knew. I feel like my father kind of knew, but was like just so mad about everything that it was just, and was paranoid too because he was on a lot of coke. So it wasn't like he just was mad. He's just so angry about
he
everything.
wasn't a good detective is what you're saying? He wasn't a good dad detective?
I mean, I think he was paranoid and was probably aware that he was paranoid. So he was probably like sure uh, that I was drinking, but also was probably pretty sure that I was doing coke and running guns too. But then it's like, well, some of those are probably wrong, and like, I don't know if you've ever gone through paranoid periods, but when you're paranoid, like, it really is just difficult to tell what's real and what's not real because you're like, this can't all be true.
And then he's just like, "I'm not gonna address any of it because I don't know." Like,
Well, because he's Irish,
he's not gonna
because
talk
he's
about
an
any
Irish Catholic person, so he's not. Yeah, I mean, he's not going to bring anything up. You know.
So
Yeah.
so you were like, how old were, um That so did it become a thing where, like, every time you were drinking, you would get sick? Because, like, my drinking journey was, like, one
Hmm.
night, one Easter vacation, my friend's cousin, gave us, like, peach schnapps, but we drank, like, the bottle of it, and, that was the first Easter we didn't go to church with my friend's family like we always used to. We felt very adult. We were like 14. And then it turned into like I wanted to show that I could chug all these terrible tasting alcohols all the time, and I had sort of a high capacity for alcohol. But and then it became I needed my own case. Like I was like, "Oh, I can't share a six pack with you. I need my own whole thing because you will not leave enough for me to have a fun time." So did your drinking escalate
Yeah.
to that way?
Well, it didn't just because of economic reasons. Like we were, I was like, I didn't have a job,
11? You're
so
like, I
yeah, I
don't
was
have
11. So
case
I was
money.
like, I had, we would get together the money we could get together, and we would get as much alcohol as we could, and we would drink as much alcohol as we could. But there was, and there were times that we were able to and it wasn't just, it was like having the money and then also having like someone to buy you the alcohol
Yeah.
and having that like match up, because sometimes like we'd have someone that would be like, yeah, I'll buy you whatever, what do you guys want, I'll buy you whatever, and we'd be like, well, we have $10, so get us a six pack of natural light.
Yeah.
And then other times we have $50 and we can't find anyone to buy us anything.
Yeah.
And so you know we spent a decent amount of time drinking, but an equally, just as much time trying to find alcohol.
Yeah. I think
And
it's different for
yeah,
girls too. Like it's way easier to just get an older guy to buy you beer because he immediately is like, "Yeah, drink it.
yeah,
I'll get cute to you." And like I
yeah. It's also a lot
I
scarier. Like I was
yeah, well, it's both.
I
Yeah.
got, yeah, I
You
got so
what?
drunk and I was never worried that I would get so drunk and I was never worried that I was gonna, you know,
Like wake
have
up
creepy
not
stuff happen
yeah.
to me. But that did
Yeah.
happen. It did happen on occasion. It was pretty rare, but it happened every once in a while.
I remember we were drinking a lot and then it was New Year's Eve. We were I want to say 15 cuz none of us had our license. Somehow one girl had her license, the one who was older. And somehow we procured we were into rum and there were like 9 of us girls and we bought 2 gallons of rum and we decided we would play this game where we took as many shots as we could in a row and then people just like we stood around my friend's table and we people started like bowing out at like 4 or 5 and like me and my friend Lindsay like at 15 we were like I think we should stop and like literally I this is the kind of drinking I'm talking about and then like a friend's brother walked in and the last thing I remember of the night is going absolute citron I love it and then chugging some of the absolute citron every girl in my friend's house vomited and the only person who made it into a toilet was one of my friends and the whole toilet seat was down so it just splattered on the top of the toilet seat all yeah it was so my friend's mother was the coolest mother and we to this day have like never seen her that angry and like we she had carpeted bathrooms and we had to pay to get the carpet replaced because it was that ruined from us. We left her house the next day and she had
Okay.
bagged up all of our clothes, like all of our puke clothes. She had them in bags and like as we would leave, she would hand us the bag and we would just be like, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry." She came home from a
Wow.
party and yeah, the next morning I remember she came everyone was just like waiting to see like what kind of trouble we were in cuz nobody even knew what was happening um or what had happened that night. And my friend's brother and his friends, they were like, it was like we were World War II soldiers. We just started like picking you guys up off the floor and then we would like carry you into the basement and like throw you on the futon so you guys could go to sleep. And they were like, we were just like moving dead bodies around the house to like put you guys to bed. We like I'll never forget we were all sitting there quietly like the ones that had spent the night and her mom just like came downstairs and she goes I just want to know one thing did the recipe for the rum cake come with the rum or did you guys get this separate and we were all like And she never told any of our parents, like, she just, like, packed up our clothes, and then we worked that summer to pay for the carpet to get replaced. Like,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, not to get too preachy here, but it is just not a good idea to have carpeted bathrooms,
No, I
and
agree.
no
I was
one
like,
should
"That's a
do it.
bad choice." Yeah. I think we
Yeah,
helped her out in the long run.
a
I was like
carpeted bathroom is so disgusting.
it was very gross.
Yeah,
Did you when you were
that's
a
so. Yeah, man,
drinker
that's.
yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I never did. I never really did drinking games. Really,
Yeah.
like I definitely. I I never. Yeah, I mean, so much of my drinking was like just being like a kid that was too young to be at like
Anywhere?
hangout with older kids. Yeah,
Mm.
and just being like, just like smoking and drinking to like, so my hands were occupied, so I would not look as awkward as I felt. You know,
Yeah. I went to a
I don't
party
know.
where I was young and, I was, like, 6 maybe I wasn't driving still, maybe I was, like, 15, but it was, like, a senior party, and I remember I wanted to look cool, so I was drinking and, I had a buzz or probably was drunk, and I remember I sat next to a guy who was older and I wanted to look really cool, so I like took a sip of my beer and I drank from the wrong side of the cup, like the opposite side, so the drink just spilled down me and I was just like and I remember being like saying something that I thought was cool and I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm like looking at colleges too." Meanwhile, I was like, "How about I'm just trying to make it to like I'm trying to make it to sophomore year." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm looking at colleges
Yeah.
too," and took a sip of my cup and it just poured down the front of me. And the guy just looked at me and then got up and walked away. And I was like, "Guess I'll just go die now." Okay. It
One
was such
time
a
I
memory.
was. This is when I was an adult, but I briefly dated this woman who was uh, drinking way too much, and she like came and picked me up at my house and then got in the car, and it was she was driving, I was in the passenger seat, and this other woman, Erin, who I'm still friends with, was in the back. And Erin was smoking a cigarette, and the woman driving said, "Let me get a drag of your cigarette." And so Erin handed her the cigarette, and she took it and then just put it like fire first into her face.
Oh,
And
yeah.
Oh
it
no.
was, she was like, "Why did you hand it to me like that?" Which is like, well, I mean,
Yeah.
it's,
It's the other person's fault always.
yeah, she was very, very drunk and driving. It was very scary. I was very scared.
I bet.
But
Laura, how old were you the first time that you got drunk?
Um, pr- I wish I like I'm gonna say probably in the like 15, 16-ish because I'm almost positive it was at a Dave Matthews concert. Because for me, that was like around the time where like Mike's Hard Lemonade was starting to be like everyone has their version of like malt liquor and right, so it's like
Yeah.
it wasn't a Bartles and James. I think we were a Mike's Hard people and which
mm,
is advertising alcohol to children. So I think it was that and a lot of my like I didn't drink beer probably until I was 21. Like I was mostly a liquor person, but like all the flavored shit. And so like like now as an adult there are flavors that are like on the absolutely not list from just years of this is my drink when I was, 19 to 22
yeah,
years old. Like, oh, it's black
it's
cherry?
stuff that
Absolutely
like
not.
when,
Thank you.
yeah, like when you think of what the drink tastes like, you remember what it tastes like coming back up.
Yeah,
Yes,
like, I
yes.
was an
Yeah.
adult when I learned this lesson, but, like, my I almost called it 9/11. My Red Bull and vodka, which is sort of like that, never again moment, was, like, I used to think I
I
would
would
drink
love it if
Red
that
Bull
drink
and
was just
vodka
called 9/11.
responsibly,
Yeah.
and I would be like, "Okay, 2." Like 2 and
You're
then
like
switch to something else.
I
And then,
think
like, one
that's
night, I just didn't stop, and I can, like, remember the feeling of being just banana slammered and so tired, but completely incapable of falling asleep from like 7 Red Bulls coursing through my body. It was like, well, thank you. Never again.
There's like a fight happening in your body. Your body's like, I'm at war with myself right now.
Yeah.
I was sobbing,
I
and like everybody loves a drunk girl who's crying, and I was like, I can't sleep, and it was like this close to being a medical emergency.
oh man. I I pretty much I was always a beer. I don't drink anymore, I should say, by the way. But I was always kind of like I was generally a beer drinker, but I only ever drank hard alcohol when I was very young, and it was just like whatever we could get. And
Yeah.
then like a couple times as an adult, and I always like I you know I remember I was. This is a very vivid memory where I was walking down the street and this guy was like, Rob Crean. And I didn't recognize who it was, but I was like, I'm a local personality. So I was like, oh, hey, what's going on? And then he was like, Rob Crean. And he brought me into this house where there were some people who I did recognize. And he was like, had, what is it? It's like a 100 proof,
151 was a
what is
Bacardi
it? There's a
151.
151, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's exactly what it was.
I
He
went
had
through a
that, and he was
151
like
phase.
taking yeah. He was like taking swigs. He was like, "Have a swig," and I was like, "Ah, no thanks, man, no thanks." And he was like, "Come on," and I'm like 30 at this point, probably. Like I'm fully an adult, and I was like, I don't really want to do that. And then he was like, "Rob Crean, you got to take a drink," and I was like, "All right," and I took a drink, and it just tasted so. It just is lighter fluid. And I was just
Yes.
like,
Gross.
I was like, why did I do that? I was like, I'm never doing that again. But I did do it.
Well, 19-year-old Katie was like, oh, I can chug 151. It wasn't good, ever. We used to pour it onto other alcohol and light it on fire and then drink that.
Yeah, if the
We were
alcohol's
like,
like main allure is it looks cool when it's lit up, it's like, don't drink it.
Yeah.
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 The coolest thing about this is when you burn
The
it and
same
it
guy.
goes away. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, and the guy that was like, do a shot, was also lighting it on fire, like spitting it and lighting it on fire. So I was like,
Yeah.
like, I'd much rather watch you do that than drink it. He was like, just
Yeah.
have a drink. And I was like, okay.
Ugh.
And I,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when did you stop drinking?
a few years back,
Okay.
I just like, I'm clinically depressed. It's not a great combination, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah.
I think that's
Which you
something
can
too.
find out all about on my album Sadly Sackerton, available on deadandmellow.com.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that more later too. But we'll also put links to Rob's Rob's work in the show notes so you
Yeah.
guys can hear about how sad he is.
Yeah, but yeah, no, I mean, like, I just, I like drinking. I'm not doing it now because I got to get my life together, you know.
Well, I think
And
like when
it
you're a
is looking
teenager.
more and more like it might.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. When you're a
it was very
teenager.
helpful when I was a teenager.
Yeah, and but also, don't you feel like you would get like really like it helped you be like fun while you were out or whatever, but then you have those like teenage
Mhm.
hormones of like I hate myself, why do I look like this? What am I gonna be? And then you're like, let me
Yeah.
just add alcohol to that, and I'll feel sad about it too. Like,
See, for me, it was so much of a way of escaping myself. Like I
yeah,
could drink. I'm extremely anxious, and just always neurotic about everything. But if I would get drunk, I could kind of like relax a little bit and like stop. It just would slow my brain down enough to not worry about everything and just worry
yes,
about some
yeah.
stuff.
I think we had
Yeah.
Liz Mealy on too, and she said
And
the
when
same
you
thing. That
start when
she'd
you're
like,
11, sorry, wait, when you start when you're 11, you like you could take a decade off the back because you got one on the front, you know? Like
Yeah, for
you
sure.
have that extra
And I
time.
also like I didn't really drink that much in high school, and I didn't drink through lots of my I've drank on and off,
Yeah.
and you know, I don't know. Maybe I'll drink again, but maybe I won't. I don't know. It's been like all 3.5 years since I've drank, and it's fine. I don't know. I don't miss it or anything. So
Yeah. I
yeah,
feel like that's a good way, unless you like need to be in recovery where like if you have one drink your life will go in a tailspin. I do notice that people who don't set like a hard limit of I am going to stay sober forever, it seems like it is easier for people to just be like, I just don't miss it right now, like we'll reevaluate tomorrow. It seems
yeah,
like an easier way to
yeah,
do it.
yeah. And
Yeah.
actually, I should say, I in the past 3.5 years, I have had champagne twice, so I
Yeah.
technically have not been sober the whole time. But because I'm not sober so much as I
Sober.
am
Yeah.
finally addressing my long-standing mental illness, it doesn't,
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Rob, you mentioned your album. Why don't you tell us more about it?
Oh yeah, so it's a really sad album about a really sad boy who. Um, yeah, I mean, basically the album is about I was in a relationship with a woman for 5 years, and then she left me because I um, pretty much refused to get mental health care, and then after that, I started trying to do that, and so it's sort of about it's about that breakup and my struggle to try and get mental health care, which is like a struggle in the sense, just culturally, like being from New England,
Yeah.
mental health care is like something that you're. But also, just it's also just like legitimately difficult because of bureaucracy. I can't see. I currently I just switched insurance and I can't see my therapist anymore. So I currently don't have a therapist, but uh, maybe that'll get sorted out.
Yeah.
Probably won't. Who
You're like,
knows?
the next album will be about life without my therapist.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, it is crazy. And the album is really, it sounds like the album is sad, but I promise it's funny.
Yeah, I mean, it was important for it to be funnier than it was sad, but
Yeah.
it's very sad. So I had to make it really funny, and it was a lot of work.
Yeah, but
But
we'll put the link to that in the show notes so you guys can download and listen to it because it is really funny and it is sweet. But also funny.
thank you. Yeah,
And then where can people find you on social
yeah.
media?
Oh, I'm at Rob Crean on everything, and yeah, on Instagram and Twitter and everything. All my videos are at youtube.com/Anderson Comedy. That's including the coast to co-host show that I do with Gary Peterson, which is
And what do you
fun.
guys do on that
And
show?
it's kind of like a weird talk show where we'll have some characters and some real people on, and we just kind of talk. And then we do it live on Facebook on the Anderson Comedy Facebook page, and then like I spend like 12 hours editing all of them and try to add in extra jokes and stuff, and then way less people watch them than watch the live one. So
Isn't
it's
that always how it is?
yeah, but I think it's cool. I mean, it's fun. I don't know what else am I going to do. It's quarantine. I'm stuck at home, so
Yeah, this is
uh,
the time
I,
to create.
yeah, I'm enjoying doing it, and it'll be something that I mean, even if I can watch it in the future, and it'll be worth it for me. All the work I'm putting now will be when I'm, in like 10 years when I go back and go, oh yeah, that was cool. I'll be like, I'm glad I did all those edits. Yeah.
Those were for me, baby. And guys,
Yeah.
as always, we want you to subscribe, review, share it with your friends. Tell us about how much you like it because we love reading it. We love reading it and sending it to each other and then reading it again. So leave those reviews because we love them. Rob, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate having you, and thank you for
Oh, thanks so
dealing
much for
with
having me.
our technical delays this week.
Thanks,
So
Rob.
we appreciate it. All right, guys, we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.